Today is something we do every now and then, but not every week by a long shot, which is these lightning talks. We have a group of talks today. And I thought I would just say that what's special to me about this, and maybe it's special to some of our audience, is that you're actually in the room getting to watch the creation of a new generation of leaders and problem solvers. That's really what universities are about. There's plenty of important problems that are going to need to be solved going forward. Most of them take a while. So it's not like you're going to see somebody say, oh, I've got the answer, we're done with this. It's more like growing the capacity of new leaders. And you're going to see that right here. And it reminds me that I've been in the room for these talks before, and I've seen those students go off, and they are now leaders in government, both state and federal and local, in the private sector, in non-governmental organizations, and in higher education. So that's something we can all feel like that's worth doing. We're going to stick with it, and we're delighted to be highlighting students today who are part of that process of building capacity to create a better future. So I'm going to let the students talk for themselves, obviously, but I'll just mention the names of the students who we're fortunate to have with us today. Zachary Davis, who's a graduate student at UMaine, Jasmine Lamb, who's an undergraduate at UMaine, Jared Entwistle, who's a graduate student at UMaine, Jessica Hutchinson, an undergraduate at UMaine, Alissa Miller-Gonzalez, who's a graduate student at UMaine. There's a whole team, the Food Rescue Maine team, who work with Suzanne Lee, that includes Kalina Kenyon from UMaine, Hannah Creighton from Thomas College, Ryan Fitzmaurice from UMaine, and Ariana Walker from the University of New England. And taking up the final important spot is Kate Follensby, who's a graduate student at UMaine. Just a little bit of reminder about this, I think everybody knows, but maybe not the audience. So we are on a pretty tight schedule to get through all these 7 talks, and they are lightning talks, which means they're short. So at 4 minutes, you're going to hear a beep. Yeah, cueing Ruth for that beep. Take it away, Ruth. Remember?
He'll hear it.
Okay. I thought it'd be fun to cue her, but apparently it's less fun than I thought. And then you'll hear it at 5 minutes. And at 5 minutes, that means you really do need to wrap up. So you got a minute when you hear it the first time, but then you got about 15 seconds to 30. People think the word lightning talk comes from the fact that you only have 5 minutes to squeeze everything together. It's actually that a bolt of lightning strikes you if you keep speaking past the 5-minute mark. You don't want to do that. Okay, so welcome everybody, and Zachary Davis goes first.
All right, so hi everyone, my name is Zachary Davis. I'm a second-year graduate student in the Schools of Forest Resources and Economics. My thesis project combines theories and methods from rural sociology, economics, and human dimensions of natural resources. And I'm very interested in how rural youth residential aspirations are influenced by their outdoor place attachment. So just some background, while rural areas often have great natural amenities, they often lack resources and opportunities that rural youth desire, such as higher education. So youth outmigration from rural areas contributes to a lot of social and economic issues in these rural communities, like graying populations and smaller workforces. So we wanted to know, how can research inform rural community efforts to retain and attract younger residents? So our research question is, how does outdoor place attachment influence where someone wants to live? And we define outdoor place attachment as a person's connection to the natural environment around them. And we measured this with 10 belief statements, and then we averaged the responses from each participant to create a score representing their place attachment. Residential aspirations are simply where someone would like to live in the future. Prior work has found associations between place attachment and wanting to live in a rural setting, but there aren't many studies looking at this relationship with a younger group. So our study area was 3 rural and forested counties in Maine and Oregon. And to collect data, we designed and administered a survey alongside community stakeholders in both states. And we delivered the survey to both middle schools and high schools during the school day in these counties to collect data directly from students. And so after we developed our place attachment measure, that score I mentioned earlier, we estimated a statistical model of youth residential aspirations as a function of attachment and demographics. So a little more on the study area. In Maine, we worked with Piscataquis County and Northern Somerset County. And in Oregon, we worked with Coos County. In total, we sent the survey to 12 schools. We had a little more than 2,000 surveys collected, and we had a response rate of 87%. So one of the questions we asked in the survey was, where do you want to live when you are 30 years old? And this chart just summarizes the response to that. As you can see, rural youth aspire to live in both rural and urban areas when they're older. So we did statistical analysis to sort of see a little bit more about this variation and where it comes from. So these are the results from a multinomial logit model that we did on residential aspirations. The big takeaway from this is that outdoor place attachment is positively associated with aspirations to live in a rural area relative to an urban area. And it's worth noting that the effect is stronger for a person's hometown rather than just any rural area. So outdoor place attachment could be key to future community strategies. And so we've been sharing these results with our partners and community stakeholders so they can best decide how to attract youth residents. And one of the ways they can do this is to foster outdoor place attachment through something like a youth recreation program where they get outside more often. And we also encourage further research to identify causality in this phenomenon rather than associations like I did here. And so lastly, this work will add to existing collaborative work between our research team and our community stakeholders. The research team has collaborated with the communities on several solutions already, such as the survey itself, which we designed alongside them. We've improved awareness of youth aspirations and concerns by developing fact sheets and then delivering them to our community stakeholders. So that's how we deliver the results of our survey. And as we're sharing the results of the survey with the community, we're consistently asking them for feedback on what sort of research they'd like to see in the future. And yeah, I just want to acknowledge my entire committee and the research team, including the stakeholder partners in both Maine and Oregon, and as well as the grant that funds this project and the Mitchell Center for hosting this talk. So thank you.
Thank you for coming to my presentation on promoting health for Sipayik through alternative energy solutions. A little bit about myself. My name is Jasmine Lamb. I'm a senior at Maine studying communication sciences and disorders. I got this opportunity because I'm a Native American student. I'm part of the Passamaquoddy tribe at Pleasant Point in Sipayik, and also because I have a minor in Native American studies. So the research team for this project comes from many different backgrounds, which makes it an interdisciplinary research team. Dr. Sharon Klein is one of the leaders of the group, and her background's in energy research and ecology environmental sciences. Chantal Neptune is the other Native member of the group, and she has a background in ecology and environmental sciences and is also a member of the Penobscot Nation. Mary is another undergraduate research assistant who has background in ecology and environmental sciences. And then there's also me. And our research is interdisciplinary because it focuses not only on environmental and energy justice, but also Indigenous studies. So the original project that we did was a community window insert build at Indian Island, which was co-created with the Penobscot Nation and members of the UMaine community. My personal part of the project focuses on the Passamaquoddy tribe, and the goal of the project as a whole is to improve access to alternative energy solutions for the Penobscot Nation and Passamaquoddy tribe at Pleasant Point through community energy action. So my primary research goal for my mini project was to co-produce information about what issues Passamaquoddy citizens at Pleasant Point experience inside of the home by conducting semi-structured informal interviews and a survey with tribal members. I'm still in the process of collecting information, but I will be asking questions about what issues in the home people feel are the most important to address, which alternative energy solutions can be implemented to address those issues, and the preferences and willingness of citizens to implement those solutions. And then my secondary research goal is to assess in a more general way how the public health of the community is affected by climate change and also drivers of climate change like pollution. I will consider all directions of the medicine wheel, which you can see on the left, while assessing the health of the community, including physical, spiritual, emotional, and mental health, as well as looking at the problem in a holistic way. The economic and cultural impacts of climate change will also be considered. So Sipayik, Maine is located on the east coast of Maine, and this coastal community partakes in many different traditional ways of subsistence and also livelihoods. So indigenous communities who eat food from the land and the water as their ancestors did are exposed to more harmful chemicals such as mercury in the fish. So that's what I mean when I say like indigenous communities' health is intrinsically tied to the health of the environment. So this is an issue for public health, but also economic security, because seasonal work is how a lot of people support their families. And some examples of seasonal work that are adversely affected by climate change, as are shown on this page, are overfishing, using brown ash for basket making, harvesting blueberries, and clamming. So documenting the needs, preferences, and experience of the community when it comes to the effects of climate change will help to inform future projects of the alternative energy or other technology solutions that are appropriate for and preferred by the community. So I work under a grant from the Mitchell Center for Sustainability Solutions, which helped to shape my research because I had to look at it through like a sustainability lens. So it wasn't only how can I help to improve the health of my community, it's how can I improve the health of my community using alternative energy solutions or other sustainability technology. So the Penobscot Nation is another one of the shareholders in the project or stakeholders in the project, who helping create our research goals, as well as providing funding, which came from the housing department. And we also followed the memorandum of understanding between the Penobscot Nation and the University of Maine. So the Penobscot Nation like hugely contributed to this project. And so in conclusion, this research project is solution oriented because it focuses on problems to solutions that arrive from climate change and its drivers like pollution. It specifically focuses on problems inside of the home since that's where people spend the majority of their time. And it also provides tribal members with the opportunity to voice their needs and concerns, which are documented and will hopefully be helpful to people that conduct future projects so they can address the issues that really matter to people in the community. And it also documents their preferences for alternative energy solutions. And here are my references, and thank you for listening to my presentation.
There we go. Hi, my name is Jared Entwistle. I'm a graduate student going for a master's in business administration and ecology and environmental sciences. I'm going to be doing a talk on exploring the potential for reusable packaging in the food service industry. This is a research project I'm doing with Cynthia Eisenhower and the Materials Management Research Group. We chose to look at reusable packaging because of the large amount of disposable waste that comes from the restaurant industry. According to studies conducted by the EPA, about 36% of municipal solid waste is attributable to single-use plastics, of which nearly 80% originates from food applications. Additionally, the use of disposables is rising. While there was a large spike because of the pandemic, in the 4 years prior to COVID-19, disposable packaging use increased by 15% worldwide. And while compostable and biodegradable materials are touted as kind of the green solution to plastics pollution, these materials often don't work as intended. Life cycle analysis of these materials show that they are often just as detrimental as traditional plastics. Additionally, they can only be processed in specialized facilities, which few municipalities have access to. Research conducted by Jean McCrae right here at the University of Maine suggests that even when these products are put through the proper facilities, the resulting products often are contaminated with chemicals and heavy metals. So regardless of the intended use, replacing plastic materials with another plastic and just using the same amount of packaging doesn't reduce the amount of waste we produce. So why reusables? Well, many reusables are made from plastic. They are made to be more durable, meaning that they can be used to replace 100 or even 1,000 single-use containers. And this can reduce the overall amount of material that we use. One trade-off, unfortunately, is that these require a system to collect, prepare, and redistribute that packaging so that it can be placed back into circulation. However, since these packages are relatively new, there is an opportunity for us to design them with safety, efficiency, and customer satisfaction in mind. So we started this project with a literature review and found that a package return rate of 90% is necessary for these reuse systems to realize economic and environmental benefits. Customers who are given the choice to participate in reusable packaging systems often achieve these higher rates of return, whereas mandatory participation often leads to a lower rate of return. In order to increase effectiveness, reuse systems must maintain customer convenience, and that is similar to our present system. In order to do this, we have to devise incentives to encourage customers to participate and bring those materials back. Lastly, there is a need to reconceive how we view waste and loss. Packages need to be viewed not as the part of our meal that's destined for the trash can, but as a separate product with a value of its own. Throughout the project, we have been working with an advisory board comprised of restaurateurs, municipal representatives, and waste managers. With their guidance, we conducted a stakeholder workshop with community members in which we presented findings from the literature review and explored what the results meant in the context of Maine. The major findings from this workshop show that that third-party reuse infrastructure will likely be necessary to handle the extreme variability we have here in Maine. Not only do restaurants vary greatly in the operational capacities, but their customer flow and bases vary depending on geographic location, season, and this is in large part due to Maine's tourist economy. In part due to this project, the Maine Health Inspection Program saw fit to change their food code to align with federal regulations allowing for reusable packaging in restaurants. From this step, we're hoping to partner with restaurants and municipalities to set up some pilot programs to test these systems in Maine. We'll also be compiling a resource guide for interested businesses and hope to continue stakeholder engagement through as our research progresses. And here's a list of some of the resources I used throughout the talk. Thanks for listening.
So my name is Jessica Hutchinson. I have some samples of biochar being passed around. And I'm a fourth-year undergraduate, and I did a mini project with graduate student Abby Novak and Dr. Ling Lee on implementing biochar to decrease peat in soilless substrates for Lowbush blueberries. So a little bit of background. Peat is a natural resource that is often used in the horticultural industry in soilless substrates, as well as for heating purposes. And it's sourced from peatlands, which are really important in sequestering carbon. And it's really slow to regenerate at 1/16 of an inch per year. And a lot of the times it's used in horticulture because it has a low pH and it retains water and nutrients really well. And it can be mixed with other things like perlite. So biochar was the focus of this mini project. It's a byproduct of biomass pyrolysis, or controlled burning, if you will. It's really important in carbon sequestration and can be used as a soil amendment. And it's also used as a biofuel. So some of the properties that have been researched about it is its water and nutrient retention and hydraulic conductivity. So for this experiment, I compared 6 different substrates: biochar, peat, a commercial substrate, perlite, and an even ratio of biochar and perlite and peat and perlite. And I implemented 3 different experiments to compare the physical and chemical properties. So the first one was a column experiment, and this was to compare the aeration and water holding capacity. So in purple here, and this orange one here, this is peat. It has a fairly high aeration porosity and a decent water holding capacity. And then with biochar, we found that its aeration is a little bit less, but it does a really good job at holding water. The next experiment, we compared how well each substrate retains nutrients. And we did 3 different treatments. We did a control, a nitrogen fertilizer, and a potassium fertilizer. So these are the results. We found that by measuring in mass, that biochar held on to nutrients the most compared to peat over here. And negative masses just represent the fact that some of the substrate was lost during the experiment. Next, we tested the pH, which is really important, especially for blueberries, because they prefer 4.5 to 6. Unfortunately for us, the biochar mixed with perlite and the biochar here had the highest average pH. So kind of a conclusion of this little mini experiment, we found that biochar is comparable to peat, which is really good so that we can decrease peat harvest. But we would have to further investigate how this influences blueberry physiology and container production, as well as how we can manipulate the pH of biochar and its physical form in media mixes. And lastly, I would like to thank you all for coming, and a special shout out to Abby Novak and Dr. Ling Lee for guiding this experiment. And that's it.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Alissa Miller-Gonzalez, and I am a first-year master's student in the School of Economics, and I'm pursuing my master's degree in resource economics and policy. Today, I'm going to be sharing with you some of the research that I've been working on with Dr. Keith Evans and Dr. Caroline Noblet about some of the considerations that Mainers believe to be the most important when making decisions about aquaculture operations in the state of Maine. So aquaculture serves a complementary role with Maine's existing fisheries, which may be facing some challenges due to a changing marine environment. And also aquaculture, so the growth of aquaculture would be able to not only support Maine's economy, but would also be able to support the communities that could be facing some economic challenges due to events like climate change or the COVID-19 pandemic. So aquaculture, in order for the growth of the industry to be successful, consumers need to be accepting of the industry. And actually, research has shown that in Maine, perceptions of the industry are generally positive, which is great. What we don't know, however, are some of the aspects of the industry that people might be concerned about, and also why they might be concerned about these things. So using data from a survey distributed by the Sustainable Ecological Aquaculture Network, that was distributed to Maine residents in 2018, we hope to answer some of these questions. So one of the questions on the survey asked respondents to rank the 3 considerations that they believe to be the most important when making decisions about aquaculture operations in the state of Maine. So some of the considerations they were asked to rank included aesthetic considerations. So thinking like smells or maybe noise coming from the farms, political considerations, so regulations for the farms, scientific research considerations, for example, technologies that could be created in the future to help the aquaculture industry, economic considerations, for example, job creation, product quality considerations, for example, how the seafood might taste coming out of these farms, and finally, environmental and human health risk considerations, for example, pollution. So results show that about 76% of respondents selected environmental and human health risk considerations as a top priority. 73% selected product quality considerations as a top priority, and 61% selected economic considerations as a top priority. We saw also that the consideration that respondents prioritized the least were aesthetic considerations, with only 40% selecting it as one of their top 3 considerations. And so because 3/4 of our respondents believed that environmental and human health risk considerations were a top priority, we're interested in looking at why that might be. So one of the relationships we're really interested in looking at is how the risk perceptions of marine aquaculture might have influenced the ranking of this consideration. So on average, we can see that our participants believed that the benefits of aquaculture outweighed the risks. So you can see that kind of in the green area. And we can also see that they were considering the environmental and human health risks when they were making this decision. We also saw that when selecting environmental and human health risk considerations as the top priority, that was negatively correlated with also selecting product quality considerations as a top priority. So again, while this particular one is only one relationship we're interested in, we hope to look at a bunch more. So in the future, in the coming months, we plan on running a statistical analysis, including some regression modeling, to see how certain factors, such as living close to the sea, maybe something like gender or environmental attitudes, among a whole bunch of other different things, might influence the ranking of environmental and human health risk considerations. So hopefully our analysis and results will be able to provide both the aquaculture industry and the state of Maine with useful information that will help be able to provide them some knowledge on how to expand the production of aquaculture seafood in order to supply communities with a nutrient-rich and sustainable food source, and hopefully alleviate some of the pressure off of communities facing economic challenges. So I'd just like to acknowledge Dr. Keith Evans and Dr. Caroline Noblet, the CNET Human Dimensions team, especially Teresa Johnson and Laura Rickard, the Maine Aquaculture Association, the National Science Foundation, and the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration for their contributions, support, and funding. And I would also like to thank the Mitchell Center for inviting me to give this talk today.
So good afternoon, everyone. Today we have our Mitchell Center Food Rescue Maine team presenting on a triple bottom line approach to food waste management through interdisciplinary teamwork. So every day, 40% of food in the US is wasted, while at the same time, 1 in 5 children and 1 in 8 adults, specifically in Maine, experience some sort of food insecurity. While it may seem like these numbers are just statistics, they tell a story of a broken food system and a need for change in some capacity.
As you can see from these staggering statistics, food waste is already a challenging issue. But we also have to make sure that our food waste solutions are sustainable ones that heed the triple bottom line, which makes this food waste problem even more difficult to solve. To do this, we strive in every solution to meet the triple bottom line, otherwise known as the 3 Ps: people, planet, and profit. This means that each one of our solutions should benefit communities, should be environmentally friendly for the health of our planet, and should be economically sound. To achieve this, we've implemented 3 big goals. To reduce wasted food in Maine by 4% in 12 to 24 months, on track to achieve 50% by 2030. to increase education about food waste issues and solutions, and to increase participation in food waste solutions such as reduction, recovery, and recycling. To meet this challenging triple bottom line goal, we have interns from many different educational backgrounds working on our team. To introduce myself, my name is Hannah Creighton. I'm a senior at Thomas College and I study environmental science and policy.
My name is Ariana Walker. I am a junior at the University of New England and I'm studying sustainability business.
I'm Ryan Fitzmaurice. I'm a junior at the University of Maine. I'm double majoring in math and financial economics.
My name is Hannah. I am a junior at UMaine and I am double majoring in English and environmental science.
My name is Karina. I'm a sophomore at UMaine and I'm majoring in environmental science and minoring in economics. So this network of interdisciplinary interns work together on 6 very different solutions to address the same problem. Solution 1 focuses on tracking and measuring. Solution 2 is food rescue through working with the software. Solution 3 addresses communication and education awareness. Solution 4 works towards rebuilding food infrastructure processes. Solution 5 works on the toolkit and food donation, and solution 6 is all about landfill diversion.
Solution 1, which is tracking and measuring, is a great example of the interdisciplinary work that goes on in our team, inside of our teams. For example, with the home tracker, I initially made a pretty basic tracker, but after discussion with solution 3, which is focused more on our public image, it made it much more digestible to the general public, as well as to elementary children, some of our stakeholders, making the tracker overall more effective at its goal.
Over the course of 2 years and 8 semesters, Food Rescue Maine has already worked with numerous students from diverse educational backgrounds. But outside of Food Rescue Maine, we work with many individuals and organizations that help us to solve this food waste problem. For example, without the help of the teachers and administration at the Gerald E. Talbot Community School, Food Rescue Maine would not have the perspective of teachers and students on board as we build our food waste education curriculum.
Some achievements and next steps students are working toward all occur within interdisciplinary teams. So an example of this could be different solutions working with pilot communities in schools or promoting launches, which include solution 3, solution 6, through the use of social media and websites. Some other examples of great achievements we've expected are gathering data, reporting, tracking, and some examples of this include the prison insights on the top left, and at the bottom left include some mapping data. And some next steps we expect to occur are including writing a newsletter and having a high school curriculum and media page.
All right, so I just want to say a quick thank you to all of you for listening to our presentation, to the rest of our team that unfortunately couldn't be here today, and a special thank you to the Mitchell Center for hosting this talk.
Hello, and thank you so much for being here today. My name is Kate Follansby, and I'm a first semester, first year graduate student in the School of Economics working toward my master's. I'm here today to talk about research that I'm doing with Dr. Kathleen Bell and Dr. Caroline Noblet regarding the impact of baselines on perceptions of climate change and erosion solutions. So shoreline change is a serious issue globally, but especially in Maine, as 48% of the Maine coast is made up of erodible bluffs, 1/3 of which are being eroded at high rates. So this is increased by storm events, climate change, and high tides. So beach managers are looking into solutions for helping protect against erosion, but they're really curious as to how the public perceives erosion and views these management solutions that they're coming up with. So my research question is, how do baselines affect public perception of shoreline change and solutions? So we know from behavioral economics that a baseline is the status quo or reference point that one uses when assessing a situation. We know that these baselines are super important when it comes to attitudes and behaviors. So the baseline I'm using is people's familiarity with the beach. So I'm looking at that by looking at how long people have been coming to a specific beach. And when we look at my data, I break that down by groups of 10 years. So coming for 0 to 10 years, all the way up to some people who said they'd been coming to the beach for 81 to 90 years. So we'll be looking at this familiarity as a link between familiarity and responses to questions about erosion and beach management. So my study area is Popham Beach State Park in Maine. Looking at the Popham Beach State Park Changing Shoreline Survey conducted in 2016. This survey spoke with 334 respondents, asking questions about how long have you been coming to the beach? Have you noticed erosion? And which management solutions, if at all, would you like to see put into place? So as you can see here, these are pictures of Popham over a 10-year period. So erosion is a serious issue there. And in this headline, you can see that as recently as last year, parts of the beach were actually closed due to erosion. So this is a serious issue that needs to be addressed. And we really want to know, are people noticing it and what do they think should be done? So here are my results. Like I said, I'm breaking it down by the baseline of 10 years, 10-year groups. So these are responses to the question, have you noticed any changes in the width, size, shape of the beach and shoreline at Popham? As you can see in our results, there is a positive correlation between familiarity with the beach and whether or not people have noticed erosion. This makes sense, as the more familiar you are with something, the more aware you can be of changes. So then we asked, overall, do you think the state should take action to address these changing shorelines or choose to let nature take its course? This graph is not broken up by baselines, we'll get there. But overall, about half of people said we should take management actions, but 40% said to let nature take its course, which is interesting. It's a pretty close to even split. So then when broken down by baselines, we see there's not really a huge relationship between baselines and whether or not you think nature should take its course. We do have this 100 and the 0, but these are really small groups. These are less than 10 people or less than 3 people in these groups. So the results look super extreme. Overall, not a huge relationship. So more research is required. I think I will probably be doing that research at some point. So lastly, we asked, should each of these priorities, such as relocating bathhouses, altering the channel of a nearby river, building a seawall, be high, low, or medium priority? This is not broken down by baselines because there would be 48 bars on this chart. So we're looking overall. And again, as you can see, there's not a huge majority. 2 options are split, but there is still support for other options, which is interesting. I also find it interesting that some of the people who said we should just let nature take its course also prioritize some of these options. So we're thinking that maybe more information would be helpful to the public. As we know, again, from behavioral economics, that more information helps people make their best choices. So it's my hope that in the future, this research can help offer insights to coastal managers, especially at Popham, as we try to further support beach management solutions in Maine and help protect against erosion. In terms of next steps, I'll be meeting this week with our stakeholders, and whatever they say as their priorities are things that I will be working towards. So maybe completing more thorough analysis with more modeling, maybe doing a media analysis of Popham over the last 10 years and how erosion is discussed in the media, comparing Indigenous perspectives with those in our survey here, and maybe comparing responses in Maine to responses globally. So I would like to thank the National Science Foundation, Dr. Kathleen Bell, Dr. Caroline Noblet, the Maine Coastal Program, and the Maine Geological Survey for their funding and support in this research, and the Mitchell Center for having me here today. Thank you.
Congratulations. I don't know that I've ever seen everybody stay on time like that, so pretty amazing. I think we've got Linda here. So Linda, your turn for a bit. And I'll take questions here too.
Okay. First, everyone, wherever you're seated, can you just clap your hands again or show these were amazing talks. These were such great talks. The questions that I'm going to ask or include are for everyone. So whoever wants to respond, just jump in. All of these great presentations were, of course, about research. So could you tell all of us that were listening to your great work, what did you learn?
Linda, just a second while we assemble the students here too. I just realized I kind of forgot that part. So yeah, just close enough that when the time is right, if you want to speak up, go right ahead. Okay. I'll do this with our audience.
Wonderful.
Take it away.
Okay. So what did you learn about research? Its importance, its value, its usefulness, your interest in maybe being a researcher. So what were the take homes for you? And don't all talk at once.
I think that personally, at first, I was a little bit frustrated that you don't just do research and get answers. But then now that hearing that everyone is kind of coming to findings and they're intermediate and we're working towards solutions that are not just for today, but for the future, that was something that I was not really aware of. And now I'm realizing how important it is to slowly start moving towards answers that can be discussed, not necessarily answers to move forward on right now.
Great. Others?
Always figure out everything on your own, so it's useful to ask other.
Can't hear you quite totally. Can you say it again?
Yep. You can't always answer all your questions on your own, so it might be useful to run it by some other people to look at it.
Great. These are real thoughtful answers. Who else? Anybody come away from it saying, I'm never, ever, ever going to do this again?
I can jump in. I did not come away from it about, never wanting to jump in. I think I just have more of a respect for the process of research, taking the time at every step and doing it thoroughly so that, you don't necessarily have to go back because of a mistake that, is detrimental to future decisions. Particularly, I worked a lot with stakeholders in the community, and doing preliminary research was like, really talking to people and listening to them and gearing specific meetings to those people was super important to getting all the information I needed. So that was definitely something that I learned for sure.
Very interesting. Anyone else?
For me, it was, and coming here, it was really important learning how to properly present your work to others who may not necessarily fully understand all of the words you're using and the context of it. So I think being able to communicate it to a general audience was very valuable.
Great, great. So another theme that came up across all of your talks was about working together. Working across discipline, working with communities, working with stakeholders. What did you learn about its importance or its challenges?
I think working with other students, like in Food Rescue Maine, we have different solutions, and working with different solutions gives you a lot of great insights into how you can incorporate other people's ideas and concepts into your own work. I know additionally with working with like other groups of people, I was able to get engaged a lot more with new communities and experience and learn about a lot of things that I would have never experienced before, without taking the step to reach out for help, or just if someone wanted to talk or contribute something.
Great. Good points. Others?
I think that working with the team that I have at the Mitchell Center on food waste solutions kind of helped me prepare for what it was like to work with stakeholders outside of our organization. Getting comfortable with my teammates and talking to them about all of my ideas kind of helped me prepare what I was going to share outside of the group. So I think probably having that experience would help me going forward when I enter the career force myself.
Great, great. People want to know, how did you select your stakeholders? And anybody can respond. And how did you get interested in the topic that you pursued?
So I think for me, I was already part of the restaurant industry before coming back to graduate school. So it was something that I was always kind of interested in anyway. And then actually, once we started finding stakeholders to join our advisory group, it kind of snowballed from there. A lot of them were really interested in the subject and had a lot of suggestions for who we could reach out to. So it almost kind of happened organically or naturally.
Mm-hmm. Gives us lots to think about when we hear this. Anybody else want to respond?
There was a combination of the stakeholders being in an important position. So I worked with Department of Corrections down in Wyndham, and because of the number of people that they feed, they're in a great place to get a lot of data on food waste. And luckily, at the facility we were working at, the cook in charge was very receptive to the idea of reducing food waste. So a combination of everybody being in the right place.
Great.
I think while finding the stakeholders, I got a really good group of advisors alongside with the stakeholders, and they were a bit interchangeable. So while they helped me push my work and my goals forward, I also was like working with them, and I don't know, it's a cool experience. I appreciate the stakeholders that I have a lot.
Great.
I can jump in quick. I think also a combination for me too, working and leaning on Suzanne Lee, who heads the project for us, and kind of her recommendations. And also specifically, I'm working in York County to pilot the Food Rescue Maine system. So kind of just brainstorming and, you know, already being in the community. For example, UNE is where I have been working to get donated food, which is, you know, my home. So that kind of thing, like being familiar with where you are, Good Shepherd Food Bank, those kind of things, just to kind of see what's going on in the community and how can we come in at the Middle Center to help and fill this niche and show that this can be done statewide. So that was definitely fun finding people in the community that were willing to listen and participate.
Great. Another question.
Hey, Linda, could I take one question from here?
Sure.
Thanks.
By all means.
So I have a question about the food waste initiative. I was just curious because I've heard about this. I actually watched part of a documentary on the food waste system. And I just wondering if you guys had worked with either supermarket industry and possibly the Maine legislature, because I believe it's France, but there's a law that says you can't, if you're a supermarket or a store, you have to donate usable food that isn't sold, whereas in the US, it mostly just gets thrown out. I was just curious if you ever considered those options or if you explored it.
So at the moment, we're mostly focused on a bunch of different non-policy solutions to these problems, although of late we have been looking more at policy, especially as Vermont was able to reduce their food waste down to essentially nothing through legislation. So we're definitely looking at it more, but none of us were specifically looking at policy.
We're hoping to learn more about grant writing in the future. And then we have also, I'm not on the solution that talks about this, so I don't know that much information, but we have worked with Hannaford's in the past.
I think I can jump in too. And like Ryan said, we're not necessarily focused on the policy approach at the moment, but something that we've been working on and other solutions, solution 5 specifically, was creating a Maine donor toolkit that pretty much, you know, informed donors of their protection under, you know, law and policy by donating in good faith. And that has been a very popular sway piece to get people to participate, because a lot of them are, you know, hesitant because they don't want any liability to fall back on them. So incorporating that type of policy into food donation has been important for recruiting donations and other stakeholders. So
back to you, Linda.
Okay. You've all driven into the state, you know, you go down south and you come back through, and there are information centers. And visitors come into the state and stop at those. What information should be there about your research that might make a difference? Pictures, fans that also have the statistics on them. What all the people that are coming into the state, how could we have them know about your research?
At least for myself, I think that statistics are the most effective way of telling people something's a problem succinctly. So telling them about like 2% of GDP being wasted on wasted food would be a good thing to put on there. I'm sure the other people would have different ideas.
I'm sure there's a way to cater the statistics to like external people coming into the state so that it's not necessarily just numbers on a page, like kind of a combination of visuals and statistics to, you know, catch their attention, but then so that they also read what Ryan was just kind of talking to.
We also have another intern here at the Mitchell Center who's working on Solution 4, working on a gleaning map. So that would have locations where you could donate food, where you could go to farms who have surplus, things like that. And we're actually working with the Maine Food Atlas to create that map. So I think that would be pretty helpful.
Great answers. Anything else? Would you like to have somebody there dressed up as a article of clothes or food? And people could come in and get the information by watching the person turn around? Anything you'd like to do?
I think it would be really interesting, like just personally for my research with like Indigenous communities and how climate change has affected them. Like if they acknowledge Indigenous people and their connection to the land in any way would be helpful, but also to like just mention the future of Indigenous people and how the land has and will change in the future would be great to see anywhere.
Terrific. David, do we have time for one more?
Yes.
So your work that you've done, do you see it as contributing to the solutions in the future?
At least for, even though mine was a mini project, I think that biochar itself has a lot of different applications. And I think that it's a really important resource that can be studied in, you know, biofuels, engineering, soil science, agriculture. So even though my project was small, I do think biochar in itself is important.
Great. Solutions.
I can hop in. So while my project didn't really focus on causality, we just identified some associations. It's definitely a step in the right direction for rural community sustainability. You know, as we do more research, we're gonna figure out more and more about why rural youth continually leave and what they like about rural communities, and hopefully that'll, you know, help us convince them to stay.
Terrific.
Yeah, and for my research too, mine was about aquaculture and identifying some of the considerations that people, you know, think about when making decisions about the industry. So if we can get answers to that question, I think it would be really helpful for both the aquaculture industry and the state of Maine to really piggyback off of that in order to expand the production of aquaculture seafood in the state and, you know, help communities in rural or areas that are really resource dependent to get, you know, maybe a cheaper food source that's also really rich in nutrients.
I think we've run out of time. Oh, was there one other person who was going to add a point?
If I have a second, I was just going to say, I think that food waste is really significant because it affects everyone. We all eat food. So I just think that it's very important to, and it can help with climate change as well as economics in our community.
Great. Wonderful. We have run out of time, but I wish every single person in the state could hear what you all had to say today. I think people would be so excited about what you're studying and what you're learning and what you hope will happen with that work. So thank you so much for taking the time during your busy schedule. We just really, everyone's saying in the chat, they enjoyed the topics and the amount of time that people were able to talk, it worked really well. So thank you, thank you.
Great job, everybody. Thanks, Linda.
Yeah.